Hello and welcome to Friday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and many of you have been asking whether there'll be a new puzzle by the legend that is Ard van de Wetering on the channel anytime soon. Well, yes, today is the day. Ard, of course, is pretty famous, certainly in Cracking the Cryptic terms. He is the man behind our biggest ever video. Look. This has just crept over 5 million views for his puzzle with only 4 given digits. It had the magic square in the middle. An amazing puzzle. And yeah, it must mean Ard's made the most famous sudoku of all time. But you can see, the eagle-eyed amongst you, that today is not sudoku. Today we are going to be trying a pentominoes puzzle. It's a puzzle type I am familiar with. I have done a few of these before, but I'm particularly pleased to be having a go at this one because it's got my name in it, and it's got cracking the cryptic initials, and it's got the letters of puzzle. So, I mean, it's visually absolutely startling, this. And yeah, it should be a real treat. Mark's tested it. He says it's brilliant. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Ard, of course, will be featuring in our Kickstarter book. And there are now only 11 days of the campaign left to run. So if you want to get hold of what will be the greatest Sudoku book ever released anywhere, then click that link. I'll put the link on the screen right there and check it out. I really, really do think you'll like what you see. It is going to be an extraordinary book. Now, let me read you the rules. If you're not familiar with pentominoes puzzles, this will look a bit baffling, but it's fairly straightforward. What we need to do is divide the grid into pentominoes. And a pentomino is a long word for something very simple. It's just a 5-cell region. So you have to connect 5 cells orthogonally together. So that would be a T pentomino. You can see it's made up of 5 cells connected orthogonally. This would not be a pentomino because this cell is only connected at a corner. So yeah, we need to fill the grid completely with pentominoes, so that no 2 pentominoes of the same shape, and that includes rotations or reflections, share an edge. So if we did decide there was a T pentomino there, for example, we could not put a T pentomino, let's do it that way round, just to we couldn't put a T pentomino here. I mean, there are other reasons we couldn't do it. For example, this cell would be isolated, so we wouldn't have tiled the entire grid, but we would also have broken the rule about cells or about pentominoes that are the same touching one another, and that's not allowed. Let's get rid of those and get on with reading the rules. A cell with a letter in it must be part of the pentomino shape normally associated with that letter. So you can see we've got a few letters in the grid. The letters are the letters in cells. They're not the letters spelt out, you know, with Simon, C and C here. So the T is saying we need to have a T pentomino touching this one. A P pentomino looks like that, the shape of a P, although obviously it can be reflected, so that's completely, or rotated, that's completely allowed as well. Z has got to be like that, oops, like that, that's what a Z looks like, and L looks like this. U looks like that. So it's fairly intuitive. What I will try and do is remember to put a card on the screen now, not a card, but on the right hand side in the instructions, a list of all the pentominoes. So if you're not sure, you will have something as a reference. Some borders between pentominoes are already drawn. Yeah, we can see the dark and blackened lines here. And all pentominoes must be used in the finished grid. Now that's a slightly unusual rule. Most pentominoes puzzles do not have that requirement, but there are 12 different pentomino shapes that are possible, and we need to make sure every single one is used in this puzzle. So that is going to be a challenge. Especially what normally happens is that the X is normally a difficult pentomino. The W, right, so W looks like that. And the F sometimes is a challenge as well. The F pentomino looks like that, although probably it looks more like an F if I make it like that. So that's what we're going to have to do. Do have a go. It should be brilliant. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. With that, I get to play. Let's get cracking and see how we do. So the first place my eyes are drawn is this, because a pentomino has got to come in here in order to pick up all of these cells, and you can see that's all absolutely forced. We're going to have to draw a pentomino like that. That's a P pentomino rotated and reflected. Now, the pentominoes that come in here have got to get out of all of these regions, so let's draw those in. No, the L has got lots of options. The U in a corner is a bit restricted. Yeah, so that's either going to look like that or like that, which means it always takes those 3 cells. So let's put that in. T's got a lot of room. The P's got a lot of room. The Z, no, that Z's forced. If we think about the shape of the Z, which is that, how on earth are we going to fit that into that area? It's going to have to do that. It's the only way we can draw that. And that means that we get an L immediately on top of it, which is nice. And we get, we nearly get an L beneath it, but not quite. Look, this could be a U or an L. We don't know which of these completes this pentomino. Now, where do we look? We have to... In very difficult puzzles, sometimes at this point, you can be faced with the challenge of trying to place, you know, the X pentomino, for example. But here it does look like there's loads of places we could potentially put it. It could go there. It could go here. In fact, it could well go there. That would put a P pentomino there, look. There's probably a variety of other places, although that might interfere with the T. So, what else should we do? We should... Maybe we'll use this region, this cul-de-sac here. Now, this looks to me like it wants to be a P pentomino, but looks and logic are not the same thing, so we have to prove that it's a P pentomino. How are we going to do that? We should... Well, let's start... yeah, okay, I see how to do it. So let's start by asking, are those 2 squares in the same pentomino? So let's assume they're not. What would that look like? Well, you can see we'd have to draw in those cells and we'd have to draw in these cells. But this one, this purple one, would have to come out one more. And now what are its options? It's attached to an L already, so it can't be an L, so it can't take those 2 squares, so it would have to be an I. And now the Z breaks the puzzle, because in order for this to be a Z, it would have to be like this, and this cell is isolated. So we can actually say with certainty, we can prove logically those 2 squares are the same pentomino. And now this pentomino can't be an L, ever, whichever way round it is, because it will touch this L. Now, it can't be a U, because that will isolate a cell, and beautifully, because of this Z here, it can't be a Z. So this square, this is a P pentomino, although I don't know which way round it goes. That way looks more restricted, doesn't it? Because that's going to isolate some cells down here. Let's look at that. So if these 3 cells have to be part of the same region, Now is that... Sorry if you guys are seeing how that's broken, or if it succeeds. I'm not quite seeing. The interesting thing, I think, is about this domino now, because which pentomino is this yellow domino part of? It can't be part of the grey or the blue because of the black lines separating them. So this domino would have to come up to there. And it can't, oh, that's really clever. So it can't be, and it can't be in the same pentomino as this cell, because if it was, that L is touching this L. So this is part of a different pentomino. And that's presumably going to break the Z, is it? Yeah, look at this. This green pentomino now could take one more cell below it, but it would have to take this cell. And now this red has to come out to at least there. And now the Z is absolutely impossible. There's no way to put it in the grid. So that is a long-winded way, but logical way, of telling me that that is the P pentomino. Oh, the problem with that is that's not actually going to do much for me, is it? Although it does suggest this is the Z. That looks very natural, doesn't it? Oh no, that's not the... that's interesting. That's not the Z, believe it or not, because if that was the Z, how do we fill this in? This would have to be a pentomino, because it can't connect to the blue, and these two cells here... oh, I've done that the wrong colour. Let's do it in grey. These two cells are now isolated. So that's not right. So in fact, the Z doesn't do that. But the Z still has options. It's got... oh no, that's not an option. That isolates that domino. So the Z is never a backward-facing Z. But it could be... oh, it could be a Z like that, a Z like that, or a Z like that even. Although that's not going to work. Why is that not going to work? Well, look, these cells now have to connect in the same pentomino. So far, so good. But now I've got the same problem down here again. This pentomino would have to be a V, and those three squares would be isolated. So that's no good. So actually, we are closing in on our Z. Our Z has to be a normal Z. It's either this Z or it's this Z. And it's not this Z. Oh, we're here. We've done it. We've done it. Let me put that in grey. Why is it not this Z? Well, what's this square going to be part of? Well, it has to take this square. It can't isolate this square in its own domino, so it has to take those two, which means it has to take that, which means it is a P pentomino, and this is most certainly also a P pentomino. So the Z, I think, has to be that... oh, my mouse is playing up a bit. It has to be that Z. This is still very congested down here, though. So I can see an I pentominoes possible with an L. Actually, no, look, that could be a Y, and that could be a T as well. And possibly this could come in here anyway. Let's look at that. If this comes left, that would be a Y. And... no, that doesn't work. That's very interesting. If this does come to this square, you get a Y pentomino there forced. But that means this square needs to find its own pentomino, which means it would have to be part of those cells. But now what does this blue region have to do? It has to pick up that square, and now I have a Y attaching to a Y, and that's no use. So that feels important actually, because if this doesn't come to this square, it must come down to this square. Now we can do a count. This often happens with clever pentominoes puzzles. Look, there is only one gate through which this region can escape its boundaries. Now, so that is 9 cells. So in fact, because we are always looking at multiples of 5 in this puzzle is important, we know that whatever the second pentomino is in this region, it's going to have to take this square as its 5th cell. So this is definitely a connected domino. And these cells, or that cell there, is part of a different coloured pentomino, which means that square is part of a different pentomino. The problem I've got here, though, is I don't know which... this could be a Y and a T, or it could be an I and an L. And I don't know which. So presumably, maybe this... I'm wondering whether the way this will get disambiguated is by... if that T... I know that T can't hit there because it would isolate cells. So there's going to have to be a way, unless I've made a mistake, which is possible, that this region here, this 10-cell region, gets split up. Because at the moment, we don't know how to divide it up. And it's either going to be divided up because something will touch it, like if this T was able to touch this cell here, then we would know this wasn't a T. That would disambiguate it. Or it's going to be because we don't use... Oh, we know there's a T in the puzzle. So maybe we don't use the Y. Have we got an I in the grid yet? No. So maybe we don't use either the I or the Y, and that tells us, therefore, that this region needs to contain that pentomino, because we need to use all 12 pentominoes. But that is tricky. This is nice. Look, this region needs a fifth square, so that's got to be there. And now look, we've got Ard's created another cul-de-sac. This is the only way in to this region. So now we've got 1, 2, 7, 11. So now we've got 11 cells in this cul-de-sac region, so those two must be part of their own pentomino, and in fact that pentomino has got to go along the bottom of the grid in order to escape. Oh, this is fascinating. I mean, I don't know how you go about building a pentomino puzzle that is logically solvable, but this is really clever. Look what's happened in this region now. It looks at first blush like this P is just going to do that, but it can't, because then there's a P region below it and they touch each other. Don't let your P's touch each other. So this, in fact, this purple must avoid this P, so it's going to come down there and create an N, which means that's a P in the corner. Now, what on earth do we do next? How long have we had? 16 minutes. Although a lot of that was me talking at the beginning, so I've probably only had about 2 minutes, I think. Now we've got to... We've got to get a T in here. Now that's not that easy to do. I can't have that T because that's going to isolate those 3 cells. So I could have a normal T, but only if it's a normal looking T, that's the only T you can draw. You can't make an upside down T at all. You know, that T's not allowed, it breaches the wall. You could have a sideways, in fact you could have 2 sideways T's, look. Bobbins. So let's try and get rid of some of these. That doesn't work, but it's tricky to see why. So let's look at this. You can see that forces the red to come up. Now we've got a 6-cell region here, so we're going to need to borrow a cell from the this pentomino. That creates a P here, and so far it looks so good. But what is this shape going to be? And in particular, what about this square? This square has to be part of this pentomino. And now we can't have this square because this square would be isolated, so we're forced to take that one, and that connects 2 L's to one another, which is not allowed. So we can say that this T is not like this, so it's a sideways T. So let's look at that. If it's there, that actually looks possible to me. Let me just take a quick stare at this and see. Oh, that one. So there is a certain amount of visualization. I mean, there will be world-class solvers doing this pentominoes puzzle probably in 2 or 3 minutes, because they are incredibly good at visualizing, and they won't be doing it as religiously logically as I'm doing it. They will do a lot of it by visualization and intuition. But here I think there is a problem. I think there is a problem. Yeah, let's have a look at this. So, if this is grey, now the reason I think this gets tricky is that this pentomino in the bottom is always going to isolate some white cells in this region. And the question is how many. So if we use a red cell there, we've now isolated a very unhelpful number of cells. There are 8 cells in that region, and I can't possibly get that down to a multiple of 5, no matter what I do with this blue pentomino. So that's just wrong. Now if this is red, you can see we end up in exactly the same position we had before when the T was vertical. But it looks like it might work at first blush, because we could put the P pentomino like that, in a colour like that. I don't know, let's do it in that colour. That looks blue, and this pentomino now works if we do that with it. This is an L, and it's not touching an L. But look at this. That has to be an L, and that most certainly is an L, and that's broken. So, all a long-winded way of me saying that the only T that works, I think, is this. Now, that forces the blue round here, forces a V pentomino to come round the corner. I want to use a different colour. I always manage to do this. I use the colours in such a way that I run out of good ways of showing. Actually, I'll make that yellow because I won't probably need to highlight it again. Now hang on, I'm just thinking about my green region here, my 10-cell green region. There is no T touching that. So this is going to have to be disambiguated by one of the pentominoes not being used in the rest of the puzzle, and that is interesting in light of this pentomino, which now has to be an I. So I think this version, where this is an I and this is an L, is not going to be possible, but that's a uniqueness assumption that I can't make. So what I'm saying is I could actually fill this in as a Y now, on the basis I don't think there will be a Y in the rest of the puzzle. Because we know there's a T, we know there's an L, and we now know there's an I. But let's not assume that and carry on. So red must go there. This must be a different pentomino. It's got to come up all the way to the top there, look. It can't be an I, because that would hive off this domino. So it's an L. That's beautiful. If that's an L like that, what shape is this? Well, that is also an L, and that's not allowed. So in fact, that L must bend that way. All of this must be part of the same pentomino. Now, okay, so maybe I'm meant to now, if we think about this sort of partial L pentomino, if it took that square, these would be a V. If it takes that square, these would be an L. But either way, all four of those squares are part of the same pentomino. So we should fill those in. Now, I was about to say the U's the 10, but it's not. If I do that with the U, I can still take this and make a V. Oh, you know what I haven't done? I've not used any of the difficult pentominoes yet. Oh no. Oh, that probably means I've made an error. I mean, I could put an X there, look. That would force, let me just look at this. That would force that, it would force this. That's a Y, which I don't want to end up with. I coming down here. No, sorry. Oh dear. Oh dear. I suspect I might have made an error because I've not yet managed to put in a W, an F, or an X. And there is very limited space left to do any of those things. And in fact, I'm running out of clues to use as well. I've got to use the L, and that's the only one I've not looked at. So the L could join up here. If it doesn't do that, it has... What are its options? It could be that. Let me just have a look at that for a second. If it does that, what is the problem with that? In fact, is there a problem with that? This is lovely. This is lovely. There is a problem with that, you know. Because look at this white domino here. How is that getting filled? Well, it can get filled, but the only pentominoes that can reach this white domino, one cell from this, which makes it red, one cell from this makes it green, but it connects to V pentomino. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. So L that way doesn't work. But actually there are a lot of other ways we could make L work. Look, I could do L like that. No, I can't do L like that for exactly the same reason, can I? Because now we can't put two cells this way in the green. So this cell is green again, and that isolates this domino. The only two things that can reach this domino are these two pentominoes, and they would connect with a V. So that also doesn't work. This might be crucial. So I've eliminated that one. I've eliminated that one. What about that one? No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work because of the U. The U would look like that, and that cell's isolated, so we can rule that out. So that's that one gone. So we've got two possibilities left, and that's these sort of Wellington boots here. So if we did that, no, that's just the same problem again, because that's going to run into this domino. So that doesn't. Oh, and it's going to be the same the other way around. Anything you try with this L not being connected like that breaks because it forces these V's to connect, or it gives a problem with the U at the bottom. It's incredibly clever, but it is also incredibly true. Now, therefore, I can connect this. This must be a pentomino, and it can't be an L, because if it's an L, it's connected to an L. So that's an I. And I still haven't put, still not put an X, a W, or an F in. Oh no. So if this was the X, I would have a Y up there, and I think that's going to break over here. Actually, the other thing I've not put in, though, that is really challenging, especially given the shapes we've got left, is W. Where on earth do we put a W? Where on earth? You can't put a W there because this U is not finished. So if we finish the U off, no, that isolates 4 cells. Anything else is going to isolate cells here. This is just bonkers. This is not right. You can't put a W. You can't put a W down here. If I try it the other way, it isolates a cell. It's not. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can just see it's impossible. You cannot put a W down here without isolating cells. So the W is going to have to go up here. Now, in fact, it's going to be there, isn't it? That works, and rather beautifully. It gives me an F over here, which gives me hope. So I think this is right. Let's just rule out everything else. This isolates cells. This isolates a cell. This still has to complete. I mean, it's just, yeah. So it's going to go here. This is the W. That finishes off that with an I. And look, it makes a beautiful F in the corner. Now, those 2 cells, and that at least, and that all have to be part of the same pentomino. And we know that because this pentomino here can't get to this square. And I've still got to put my X in. Where is the X going? So rather, it is beautiful actually, I think, because if the U does that, there is now only one place the X could go, and it isolates 2 different cells. That's not right. So the U must bend like this, and that gives us the option of hiding the X in the corner there, or almost in the corner. That gives a P next to it. Oh, I shouldn't have made that. I'll make that grey. This must be blue. This must be red. And this must be a T pentomino, and it's blue. And we have not used a Y pentomino in the grid, which tells us how to disambiguate the final section. That is incredible. That is an incredible finish. So there you go. That now is what I would submit in a competition. Beautiful. I hope you guys enjoyed that, even a scintilla as much as I did. It's just fantastic. And Ard flexing his puzzle making prowess. He's already shown us his sudoku prowess, but now we get to see this as well. Thank you very much, Ard, for making that puzzle for me, I guess. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know in the comments. Back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.